28th of Cheshvan, 5786. We are continuing in Sefer Halikutim, Tzemach Tzedek, the Hasidic encyclopedia of the Hasidus of the Tzemach Tzedek, page Tov Kuf Lamed Gimel, which would be 533. And we're in the second paragraph, Ach. So we spoke about Sancheriv, that he's really the worst, because he is an exception, and most of the Goyim, are we still there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think you just lost video, but
All right. Okay, there we go. Because most of the nations of the world, even though they're Oivdei Avodah Zarah, they worship idolatry, but they agree and they believe that the CEO is Hashem, and they call him Elokad Elokaya, the God of gods. However, we said Sancheriv was different, and he was in complete denial. Okay, so now let's continue. Achine. Achine, kol ze mitzad shehaor v'hashefa ha'elikis meir aleihem. So all of this is because the godly energy and light and the flow of energy shines upon them. V'zois ha'ha'ara, and this radiance, gam sheba v'nimshechas b'sitra deklipa, even though it goes through the negative channels, it goes through the side of klipa in the negativity, that which conceals over godliness, over the truth, through a tremendous amount of this down chain, me'ila le'ila, from cause to the lower cause, to the next cause, next cause, next cause, each cause an effect, so the effect becomes the cause for the next. So it's going down so many myriads of levels, with all the specific detail levels, shebohem, which are in all of these levels, meirishon l'seifon, from the very beginning to the very end. So therefore, even though the Goyim are getting their vitality ultimately from Hashem, but it's going all the way down till it ultimately goes through these klipas of Sitra Achra. Now, he says a very interesting language that we don't find too often. And he says like this, K'moi like miklipa da'atzilus, which is a very interesting term, because the world of Atzilus is so godly that, I mean, for example, it uses the verse from Tehillim, from Psalms, that says, Lo yagur chara, that there's no evil there, and that is a reference to the world of Atzilus. And yet, he's saying the klipa of Atzilus. So, in other words, godliness as it is in Atzilus, but then it becomes concealed. So that's called a klipa. And where does that go down to? B'klipa devriya, to the next world down, the world of Bria, which is again it's a holy world, it's a spiritual world, and over there also klipa. And from there, umiklipa divriya, liklipa de yetzira. And then from the klipa of the world of Bria, it goes down to the klipa of the world of Yetzira. Kayadua, as it's known, de'es zeh l'umas zeh. So again, the acronym it's a concept which is based actually on a pasuk that says zeh l'umas zeh, asa, that Hashem made this opposite to that. So whatever we have in Kedusha, as a rule, we have its opposite, so to say, the counterpart, in klipa. V'yesh klipa d'Atzilus, and there is the concept of a klipa of Atzilus, b'partzuf Adam, in the, so to say, the complete image of the face of Adam, Roish, there's the head, Umoichin, and the intellect, V'gufa, the body, Chuli, etc. Umashpia libriya. So that klipa of the complete form of Adam in the world of Atzilus then influences and goes down the down chain in the spiritual evolution to the world of Bria. V'hainu k'moi mi bechinas nehi deza de klipa da atzilus nimshach moichin lebechinas atik yoimin de Bria de klipa chulu. Okay, which basically translate, meaning to say that from the aspect of nehi, which is the lower attributes of the branches of the emotion, netzach, hoid, yesoid, victory, glory, and foundation, which those three are the branches of chesed, gvur, and tiferes, of zah. Zah is, of course, collectively all the attributes of all the emotional attributes. That stands for zeir anpin. Of klipa of atzilus, draws down and becomes the intellect of the atik yoimin of bria, of klipa. Meaning, just like we have in the regular system that we normally talk about, atzilus down to bria, so there's a system of seder hishtalshelus, the order of the down chain, of how it forms into the next level. So from the lower level of the high, that ultimately becomes the highest level of the next level. So here he's saying it works the same way in the klipa. So from nehi, that's a choid yesoid, of the klipa side of atzilus, that ultimately becomes atik yoimin, which is the inner dimension of keser of the klipa of bria. So he really didn't even mention malchus, because normally we say malchus becomes the atik of the next world down. V'hu hanikra melech zaken uchsil, and this is referred to as the old foolish king, meaning the atik yoimin, the inner dimension of the keser of the world of bria of klipa. So he's an old king because that's what atik literally means. Atik yoimin means ancient of days, the old one. And he's a fool because we're talking about the side of klipa. So that's the way it normally works. That's the system of how klipa gets its life and sustenance and flow of energy from kedusha. Mikol makoim, nonetheless, lo yuchal liyos bohen, but there cannot be in them bechinas nifrad gomur kol kach limroid chulu. They can't be so separated from the truth of godliness to be completely a separate entity to rebel against him. That they cannot do. Me'achar sheloi nifsak sham he'oras or ha'liki legamrei, and that is because it did not totally stop and get cut off the godly light. You know, it's very much hidden, but it's there. It's not totally cut off from them. Gam shemitzumtzum sham betachlis ha'ester chulu, even though it's condensed to the ultimate and it's really, really concealed and hidden. But it's not like it's totally really cut off. So therefore, that's why you can have oivdei avodah zara, these idolators, which is like that's like the biggest sin, conceptually speaking, philosophically speaking, about Hashem, against Hashem, that you're worshiping something else, you're believing in some other deity. But at the end of the day, they realize that that is coming ultimately from Hashem. Their mistake is, as we've spoken many times, that they attribute powers and independence to the stars, constellations, or whatever else they decide to worship. But they know the truth that the only way the stars and constellations and planets and what have you exist is only because Hashem is vivifying them and giving them energy to exist. So that part they got, because they're not completely separated from him, even though there's a total concealment of Hashem. Viraya, and a proof to this. Mi Bilam, from Bilam. Uchahai Gavna and the like canal, like we said earlier. So Bilam, who was very, very wicked, and he was extremely sinful and disgusting, especially according to the interpretation of the Talmud, the oral Torah, what it tells us about him. And yet, Hashem granted him prophecy, and he, who wanted to do the job that he was hired for, even more than the king Balak who hired him. He wanted nothing more than to, chas v'sholem, curse the Jewish people, but big time. And every time that he only ended up blessing them, and Balak, who hired him, was getting so frustrated and fed up, and he said, what are you doing? I hired you to curse my enemy. And then he makes a statement and he says, I cannot transgress and go against the word of Hashem. He said, I told you that, and I told your messengers that from day one. He was hoping that he'd be able to get Hashem either off guard, so to say, or to approve, or he'd be able, whatever he was thinking in his corrupt mind. But even Bilam ultimately says, I cannot go against the word of Hashem. However, now we're going to talk about the exception again, Sancheriv. What we said until now is the general rule. This is the way it is by most idolaters, by most of the nations of the world. However, kasher hoylech hashefa, when this flow of godly energy goes basitra achra, to the other side, sheloi bivchinas ila ve'olul, not in a way of cause and effect, or as we said, cause to cause to cause. Ella rather, bivchinas richuk ha'erech, by a way of distance. Normally when there's cause to cause and effect. So that's the whole point. If you need 10 rings to get from point A all the way down to the 10th one, that's because point C is too far from A, so you need B to connect them. And then you can't get from B to D, you need C, and so on. That's Ila v'alul. That's cause and effect. That's one link to the next, to the next, to the next, like the domino effect. However, when there is a distance, a richuk ha'erech, a distance of the value that you cannot compare one to the other, like, I guess in science, that would be like a quantum leap or something like that. Bishinui, and you want to change something, mimahus la mahus, from something's essence state to a different essence state, not just to water it down or to lower it. Shehu, how does you do that? Al yedei bechinas sairois kanal. That is through the concept of hair, like we mentioned above. Like we said, that the analogy is that the hair is coming out of the scalp, and each hair is hollow, so it's sort of representing a pipe, and it's the brain, the intelligence, which is seeping out, but in such a condensed form that there's zero intelligence or zero connection to intellectualizing or understanding when it comes to hair. And even when the hair is attached to the body, cutting it feels no pain. Cutting the hair is, because the hair is so external, even when it's alive and it's growing and it's part of the body, and it hasn't been detached, but to detach it causes no pain, because the hair and the intelligence in the brain are completely incomparable. So that would be the analogy of the idea of the godly flow of energy coming to the Sitra Achra in a way of hair. Oz, then, Yuchaliyos, there can be, Bohem in them, in the Klipa, the Sitra Achra, Bechinas Pirud Legamri, then they can be completely separated from Hashem, in a way that they don't call him Elokah de Elokaya, the God of gods. K'moi, Klipa de Sancheriv, like the Klipa of the king Sancheriv, the king of Ashur. Shekichesh Belikim Legamre Kanal, that he denied Hashem completely. And not just Yud Kei Vav Kei, but even Elikim. Paroi, the king Paroi was such a klipa, he at least said, I don't know Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei. I only know Elikim. I connect to the God of creation, of nature. I don't know about Yud Kei Vav Kei. So what are you coming, he says to Moshe, in the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei? Who's that? Whereas Sancheriv, he is even denying Elikim. So basically, he is completely in denial, denying the existence of Hashem, even in the most distant form of calling him Elokad Elokaya and saying that he's the boss of all bosses. Nope. He completely denies Hashem, and that would be because he's such a distant klipa that he's getting this, of course everything is from Hashem, but he's getting the godly energy in a way of a disconnect. So he's completely separated from Hashem, so to say. All right. We are getting very close to the end of the whole section of Umot
Oh.
So we're going to start the next piece. We're not going to have time to finish it. So maybe next time we'll either continue from where we're at, or maybe we'll start it over this last piece. So we're on the bottom of Tov Kuf Lamed Gimel. And this is, again, from the Tzemach Tzedek in Or HaTorah. Ubir Hadavar, the explanation of this idea. Hine, behold, Gam sheyesh ribu yishtalshlus beyoser. Even though there is a tremendous amount of this ishtalshlus, of the down chain, of the spiritual evolvement, kolzman, sha'ishtalshlus leches v'nimsheches, so long as this down chain is continuously going bivchinas ila ve'olul, in a way of cause and effect, asher ein haolul rachik min ha'ila kol kach, which by definition means that the effect, the outcome, can't be so distant from the cause. V'yesh lo erech v'sug chulu, and there is some kind of a comparison and some kind of a comparison between the cause and the effect. They're in the same category, even though that's the cause and that's the effect, and one might be much greater than the other, but if this is a direct result of that, they have to be within the same world, the same frame. And it's not coming by way of changing its essence, its core essence state. And it's not jumping and skipping so much. It's not like, well, the effect is totally incomparably lower than the cause. That's not the case. Azai, so because that's the way of the ishtalshlus, and its cause and effect, no matter how many levels down it's going, each level is comparable to its cause, the level above it. Azai, so then, Gam berivivos yiridas hamadregos, even in myriads of this descend of levels, one to the next, lo yishtana mehus shel ha'or v'hashefa harishona kol kach. The essence of the godly light and the flow of the godly energy, the original one, won't change so much. So even if you take it 1,000,000 levels later and further, sure, level number 1,000,000, we don't see the connection to the source. But that's only because you're looking all the way down at number 1,000,000. But can 1,000,000 be compared to 999,999? Yeah, of course. It's just one level above it. And can that be compared to the one before it? Yes. So if you work your way that way, if you take those steps in any analogy you want, whether it's in mathematics or in science, whatever it is, in the world of physics, whatever, so everything can be traced back step by step. So therefore, ultimately, no matter how far it is, it does have this link and this connection to the original source. It's just that because it went through so many levels, so when you get to the final lowest level that you want to get to, when Hashem gets down to the bottom of the bottom, which is what he wants, so over there, the godly light is so little, is so dim, it's barely recognizable because it went through all of these contractions. So it's really, if we could put it this way, it's only a quantitative difference, not qualitative. It's just so much less. But in essence, it's the same godly light energy that exists all the way at the beginning. It's just that it's becoming lesser and lesser and lesser and lesser. So if you have 1/1,000,000th of the sunlight, you still have the sunlight. Yes? You with me?
Yes. I don't know.
Okay. V'amnam, however, yuvan mizeh, so from this will be understood, ba'avdolas ha'erech, when we make this distinction of the value, of the worth, gam besitru de klipa, even in the side of klipa, shima'ar hoylech u'mishtalshel bohem derech ilav alul, that if the godly light goes down into the klipa in a form of cause and effect, shu bekiru va'erech, and therefore it's close, it could be compared to it, it's just much, much less. Gam shekol ikar sheresh harishin shalahem eine rak mibchina acharena shebiktusha hamitzumtzum b'yoser kanal. So there has to be this point, where do you make the switch from kedusha to klipa? So everyone explain it in levels, but let's really simplify it. To get from kedusha to klipa, it's less holy, because meaning to say, it's less light, which means more concealment. And then at some point you cross the border and now you're at the top of the klipa, at the least impure part of the klipa. True, it's klipa, but there's got to be at some point where you went from the lowest of kedusha, of holiness, where it's most dim, to the highest of the klipa, of the sitra achra. So at the end of the day, it's coming from there, and you can even trace it to there. Mikol mokim, but nonetheless, efshar, it's impossible. Shishavebo and bechinas nifrod gomur, but you can't have a klipa which is totally separated from Hashem, to the extent that the klipa should be able to totally deny Hashem. Ella rather, kula moidim, all of them, even the klipa, even the idolaters, they acknowledge v'karu leila kadol kaya, and they call him the God of gods. It's just that this light, this godly light, is so concealed through so many contractions. Kasher Babohem, when it comes into them, through this down chain, so many, to the extent that, like Pare said, he can have the audacity to say, the river is mine, I made it. And he can rebel, Hashem, and go against the will of Hashem. Like Pare said, Mi Hashem, Asher Eshma B'koiloi. Who's Hashem that I should listen to him? I don't have to listen to him. So it can get that bad. But everyone, even that Paroi, they know and they acknowledge the truth. And this is the term that our sages of blessed memory said, that they know their master and they are having intention to rebel against him. And that would be like Amalek. They know Hashem, and they want to rebel against him. Then it's going to go on to say, but even though it's that bad, but they're not totally and completely separated from him. It's sort of like a child who unfortunately is the most rebellious child and totally rebelling, not just disrespecting, but totally rebelling his parents. I mean, doing the worst things to his parents. Does he intellectually understand that he wouldn't be here physically alive if it weren't for his parents? He does. So then you get into the whole philosophy. So why are you rebelling and everything like that? Fine. And he can have a whole explanation which might be very convincing. How terrible his parents are, how no good they are. He wishes he had a different set of parents, whatever. But the fact is, even the most rebellious child against his parents, he knows that they are his source. So the same thing with Oivdei Avodah Zarah, or those that are knowing their creator, they know their master, and they rebel against him. They're not becoming totally separated from him, because that can't be. Except for, and then we get into, again, the whole idea of what we're saying about Sancheriv. Okay, so we're up to the very end of the page, the last 2 lines.
Mark it this time.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Be well, Rabbi Turen. Be well.
Thank you. All the best.
Okay, good.
Nice to see you, Yossi.
Yeah, thank you.
Be well.
Okay, stay well.